Hello and welcome to Different Perspectives. I'm Paul Ndiho in Washington. Tonight, we are focusing on how coding, new technology, artificial intelligence, and practical skills are reshaping opportunities across Africa, and what happens when knowledge is allowed to travel. I have some special guests coming up. In a world driven by data, automation, and AI, coding is no longer just for engineers. It's becoming a core skill for work, innovation, and entrepreneurship. One organization working at the intersection is Coders Who Travel Incorporated, founded by Afia Owusu-Forfie to connect global expertise with underserved communities, especially women in Ghana and beyond. Joining me for this conversation are Afia Owusu-Forfie, founder and executive director of Coders Who Travel, Prince Boadu, program manager for supply chain data centers at Google, and Nah-Abiah Al-Hassan, a manager at Ernst Young and co-instructor at Coders Who Travel Foundation. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Different Perspectives.
Thank you.
Thank you for having us, Paul.
Yeah, it's a pleasure to have you for the first time. Thank you so much for honoring this invitation.
You're welcome. We do have a little bit of history, so I'm glad to be back on your platform.
Thank you. And likewise, I'm excited to interact for the first time with Prince and Nah-Abiah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Together, we'll explore how coding, new technology, AI, and skills-based learning can unlock opportunity, fuel entrepreneurship, and reshape Africa's next generation of techies. I guess let's start with you, Afia. Maybe bring us up to speed. You are celebrating 10 years of Coders Who Travel. Bring us up to speed. Tell us who Coders, who you are as an organization.
I'd like to give you a pardon since you're having me third time on your show. But it's not Afia, it's Afia. So it's like how you say Amy, but even though it starts with A. So
my apologies.
It's Afia. No worries. Afia means I was born on Friday. I come from Ghana originally. I'm based in the United States currently. And in Ghana, there are tribes, and I come from the tribe of the Ahafos in the Akan group, which also includes tribes like Fanti and the Ashantis. So thank you for your question, but please reiterate again for me so I can answer your question, because I took a detour to make sure you pronounced Afia correctly.
Okay, my apologies again, Afia. I wanted you to bring us up to speed. Tell us who you are as an organization.
Okay, so Coders Who Travel Incorporated is a United States-based organization that has a 501c3 status from the Internal Revenue Services, with a mission to inspire and advance the careers of coders. Now, you mentioned we began, or I executed Women in Tech projects, but it's been evolving to where now we have women vetting men in their lives who are supporting them with their coding journeys and career coaching journeys. And so we now focus on women veterans, that is U.S. military personnel that are transitioning into civilian life. We also have done projects for high schoolers and college students across 4 institutions, including Catholic University of Ghana, Ghana's first university, Blue Cross University College, that have seen us embrace some fashion designers who are passionate about technology, as well as my alma mater, Wesley Girls High School, a very prestigious female boarding school established in 1836 by the wife of a Methodist minister, and the woman's name is Mrs. Harriet Wrigley. So our 190th celebration will happen next February at our speech and prize giving day, which is a standard. And so I just also want to say University of Ghana is where I got my Bachelor's of Science in Computer Science and Statistics combined majors. I hope I answered your question, but it's a good time to.
Yes, thank you so much. Let's go to Nah-Abiah. I hope I'm pronouncing your name correctly, right?
Nah-Abiah.
Nah-Abiah. So let's talk about you and coders who travel. You've been instrumental in making sure that this organization that started nearly 10 years ago fulfills its mission. Tell us your story. How did you get into coders who travel?
So I met Afia a couple of years back when she was also running the Women Who Code Accra chapter. So during our engagements, she then decided to bring me onto the Women Who Code Accra chapter as a co-director, and also the Coders Who Travel nonprofits supporting with co-instructing.
So what has your experience been like working with the group?
It's been an exciting journey. So we did a trip to Kokom in Goso, actually, in 2022, if I remember correctly.
No, you got that right. It's Kokom. It's Kokom.
It's Kokom, rather. Okay.
Yes, it is Kokom.
Yes, in 2022. That was an insightful journey where we were able to impart some knowledge to high school students in that region. It's an underserved region in Ghana as well. We've also engaged with other students across. So being able to impart my experience and knowledge over my years working has been incredible.
You know, Prince, from talking to Afia, she says that without your help, Coders International would not have made a lot of strides. Tell us what you've been able to do in terms of helping these young people learn these skills.
Yeah, thank you very much. So I think before that, I'd like to give you a context, right, to essentially what I kind of bring to the CWT. So aside supply chain, I also kind of run ecosystem building in Ghana. I co-founded a hardware innovation hub called Kumasi Hive. And so I've been training young people within technology space together with my group for some time now. And when I first met Afia, she also came on my platform, and we've been talking really about developing young people, not just young girls, but young people in Ghana in general. And as you are aware, right, the kind of workforce that tomorrow's economy would need, that workforce would have to be prepared today. And so personally, I've been helping Afia, for some of the programs to essentially train young people. Recently, we had an amazing time with some young students from Wesley Girls High School. We had a few of them from Catholic University. We had, some university students, and we trained them not just to kind of be capable today, but rather to be capable tomorrow as well. And how do we do this? We bring to the fore, or to their knowledge, the essential skill sets beyond coding, actually, that are relevant for them to be employable and also to innovate, for tomorrow. So if we look back, 10 years ago, no one was talking about AI. Right? No one was really interested in machine learning or, and all that. Today, as we said now, companies are building, data centers. They are trying to outshine each other. It means that the skill sets that are required today are completely different from the skill sets that was required 10 years ago. So you may have been proficient in Excel 10 years ago, and today companies are looking for people who can program the Excel sheet, not just use it. So essentially what Coders Who Travel, we are positioning ourselves, and that is what I bring on board, and working together with Nah-Abiah and Afia, is to prepare the next generation of Africa's workforce with the necessary skills that they would make them relevant in the world of work tomorrow.
Interesting. Afia, when you started this organization, it was out of a very specific areas. You identified a critical area, especially women who did not have these skills. You wanted to impart some of these skills on them, and here you are 10 years later. You have done incredibly well. Has the original mission changed from how this organization started, or you're building on to what you started 10 years ago?
Great question. So I don't forget, remind me that I said small beginnings. I started with small and very humble beginnings. But I just want to commend these two individuals for how talented they are and how much of a heart of gold that they have. Because Nah-Abiah actually traveled about 12 hours one-way trip to get to that village in Kukum and back, okay, on a weekend, while she's managing responsibilities at EY or Ernst Young. For Prince, as a judge, he had to grade over 19 students with who each had 16 separate career coaching artifacts, right? And he had to do it for 3 days of nearly an hour and 45 minutes, if not 2 hours. So just quickly inserting that I applaud the work that they do. So it gives color to who they are. Now, number two, we started very humbly, or I started very humbly. All I knew was that I walked into a Martin Luther King Library Martin Luther King Jr. Library in Washington, D.C. And I walked into a room of the library with women teaching programming languages informally. And immediately in my heart, I felt like this is something that I wish I had when I was studying mathematical sciences at the University of Ghana between 2003 and 2007. Now, I enjoyed female friendships a lot, but going back to my high school days, I also had great friends in male, who were typically friends of my male cousins, and they also became my friends. And so I've been into sports, tennis, table tennis, lawn tennis, bicycling, and to name a few. Now, because it started so small, all I wanted to go back to Ghana and give back to that community of women, to give them something I myself did not get. Having those female friendships, all we did was chat, watch maybe romantic comedy movies, but we were all mathematical scientists, but we sort of didn't create this structure of actually perfecting our craft of coding, which was required in both computer science, mathematics, physics, and statistics. So I just wanted to fill that void and bring, healing to people that go through a lot, because they are so demanding that most students in these programs need to manage their mental health or physical health at some point. But I remember always reaching out to the guys, the smart guys, at some point when I wanted a turnaround in a couple of grades that I'd made badly because of indecision to decide and settle quickly on the type of major that I wanted. Eventually, I would do computer science and statistics, but I started seeking out the smart guys, but I never sought out my own female colleagues like Amma, whom we call tall and feisty Amma, or Amma, who we call blunt Amma, and we're kind of a trio in the department, right? And I was sort of in the middle, being a peacemaker between feisty and blunt. But these women, we never really said, let's go to the library and help each other and let us learn. For some reason, we went to the smart guys for that, right? So this whole women who code, walking into the room, seeing women building each other, that just, endeared my heart. And that endearment will lead me to going back to Ghana after 7 years. I came to the US November 4th, 2008. I had first visited in December 2007, but my full relocation happened in November 4th, 2008, on the election night of former President Barack Obama. Now, after that, trying to gather my thoughts and not lose my train of thought, but I also went back 7 years in November of 2015. That's exactly 7 years in the same month. And so I launched 7 maiden events, from a hackathon, the case for programming, lightning talks, the value of mentorship, and on and on and on. And so going back, I got a lot of support through Statistics Without Borders, which is the pro bono arm of the American Statistical Association. Names worth mentioning are the co-founder, Gary Shapiro, an illustrious applied statistician, and 4 women, Samantha, Awa, Lorraine, and Anna. And they all helped me with some form of administrative, business development, coding curriculum to support that maiden launch. And there was another guy who also supported with budget templates. But what everybody was trying to tell me was that, Afia, where's the money? Where's the cash that you are going to use to launch this great initiative? And that wasn't coming through up until the point that I was about to leave. And it's not like I wasn't getting advice. Families were advising me. The group around me were advising me. And also, as the money wasn't coming, I had a choice to either abandon the project. Like someone said, don't do anything before you see a single dime. But ultimately, I decided to go to Ghana and help those women. And so that's kind of how it started, me trying to do this for a group of women. I'd very much worked in their shoes in prior years, but now basically having to stand literally in the financial and operational gaps. Financial because I never got the cash, operational because the culture in Africa in launching products, whether it be technology or data or AI, demands that we understand the cultural context, because you can't just assume, like me going to Africa or Ghana, that I'm going to get in-country sponsors to give me light snacks, room, internet, all for free on a regular basis, right? And so those were some standing in that financial and operational gap for close to 9 years and 9 months was really a balancing act of what was in my heart for the grievances I had versus the passion and the love that I have for the women. And so I know that was kind of long-winding, but I hope that sets the stage for the rest of our conversation today.
Sure. Nah-Abiah, building on what Forfie has said, what do you see in the data about the skills young Africans need right now, and which gaps are still there? How can these young people, these young women in Ghana and across Africa, maybe tap into these opportunities?
Yeah, so what we're seeing now, AI is the big thing now. I think what most people maybe, there are different schools of thoughts around it from my perspective. Them being scared about it, taking over jobs, them saying its hype is going to go away very soon, so they don't want to invest to it. But once it's here, it's changing the way we are working. So ideally, we need to invest in the skills to use AI, to build AI, to be digitally effective to meet the markets and the needs that we are seeing right now.
Prince, a couple of days ago, I was talking about people who are opposed to data centers. And from what I see, you are managing these data centers from a global tech and supply chain perspective. How important are these digital tools? And in today's workforce, how can people utilize maybe those data centers, whether it's in Ghana or anywhere in Africa, to make to make a living?
Yeah. So, that's a very important question, right? So I see things from a supply chain point of view, right? So this is, I'll allude to a very simple analogy, right? It's like saying that you want to improve the transportation system in a city without building roads. It's impossible, right? In the same vein, we cannot make all the noise and hubbub about machine learning and artificial intelligence without data centers. Actually, all along, we've been using data centers. most of us just didn't know it. Whenever you go to Google to type a search, right, you are essentially using a data center, right? Whenever you save your items in the cloud, where is the cloud? People think the cloud is invisible. No, it's actually a visible data center that stores your data, right? So whatever it is that we are thinking about in terms of the next phase of innovation using AI, machine learning, and all that, data centers are essentially indispensable. Now, the question is, how do we take advantage of this? Now, whenever we look at artificial intelligence, most of us look at it from the front end, right? So we are looking for programmers, we are looking for coders. But I argue that if we take a supply chain point of view, mind you, for every machine learning workload, you need chips. Right. So the next stage will be chips. Can we train, electrical engineers? Can we train, mechanical engineers? Can we train other form of engineering capabilities that can go into the space of chips making? Then the next phase, we look at it. Okay, every chip has to be powered. So we need power. So can we train, again, some electrical engineers? Can we train materials engineers, for example, in Ghana or in Africa, to be able to go into that space of power generation? These days, we have other sources of power, right? So it could be hydro, it could be solar, it could be any other form of sustainable energy generation. Mind you that data centers consume a lot of energy. Some consume as much as sometimes 10 million homes, would consume, right? So we need to train the next generation of Africa's youth also in that regard. Then there's the next stage, which is the actual physical infrastructure that powers these chips, that powers all the AI needs of the world, and that is the data centers. So we are looking at construction workers, we are looking at building technologists, we are looking at civil engineers, and so forth. So beyond the actual front end, artificial intelligence, and all the fun we are having, using ChatGPT, generating images, when you take a look at this whole, hubbub, from a supply chain point of view, you realize that there are other professional capabilities that Africa can build beyond the actual front-end coders. And for me, that's what I'm really passionate about. And that's what I think, CWT, we are trying to do essentially to give these young people other perspectives rather than, the usual narrative that we have in the newspapers and all the platforms that we see.
So I'm going to address this question to all of you. All of you seem to be in agreement when it comes to these new technologies, how AI has taken over. As a matter of fact, right now, what we are using, this platform is driven by AI. Everything is AI. So how are these young people, especially in Africa, in Ghana, where you guys are from, taking advantage of these tools? Because we cannot afford to remain behind. We cannot afford to sit back and let the rest of the world use these tools when we are not there. We have to be physically present, not just there, but also apply them to maybe to do jobs, to create a living for ourselves. How are young people playing around with some of these tools?
Can I start, if that's okay, Afia and Nah-Abiah?
Yes.
So I'll give you an example. Like for the last event that we've had, we just ended a few days ago. One of the high school students, I was blown away, has actually built a calendar app by herself. She has built all the needed APIs, right? She has essentially coded the calendar by herself, and she's using. And this a teenager in high school. When I was in high school, I'm not sure I'd even used a laptop before. Right, the first time I owned a laptop was in second year of my undergrad. That's when I had access to a laptop. And what Coders Who Travel are doing, and most of the students who are in high school that we actually trained, some of them are already coding in R, some of them are already coding in C++. These are high school students in robotics. Some of them are into mechatronics. Like, they are actually building stuff. Of course, they are essentially the miniaturized versions of what we are seeing in industry. But if a high school student is already building a calendar app, who knows, the next Calendly CEO, Calendly is a multi-billion-dollar company. The next Calendly that we are going to have might come from one of them, right? We are talking about robotics, essentially these days. more than 80% of the students that we talked to in Wesley Girls High School were in the robotics club. Some of them have won national awards, have met the president of Ghana. Some of them have gone on international robotics competitions and have won or have placed in some position or the other. So essentially, what we are discussing here, these are not fantasies. They are actually happening. And we saw them a few days ago with some of our students in Wesley Girls High School and in Blue Crest High School as well. So I'll leave it to my other panelists.
Yeah, it's Blue Crest University College. And thank you so much, Prince. That's my alma mater, by the way, 190 years old next year. It was a blessing to have that privilege of going to that school. So that I go in a different lane than Prince just touched on with Wesley Girls and his observations. I want to talk about the Blue Crest University College ladies who are fashion designers, and they are combining technology, and some of them were using AI to help because we require blogs as one of the 6 artifacts from their career coaching portfolio. So we train them to create resumes, LinkedIn profile, cover letter, mind map, and etc. 6 of them. So blogs are what they wrote, what's in their heart. And the judges, Prince especially, and we had another judge, Miss Sarah Osei, and 2 more judges, Dr. Christina Alva and Dr. Asma Ali. They were giving feedback like, hey, when you use the AI, make sure you own it. And I was like, how are you guys telling the difference? And they were like, that's why we are judges. So let Afia move on. I have a team. If you beat me with AI, my team will get you. So that's public service announcement. But yeah, I just touched that the fashionistas are leveraging technology and they understand the AI enough. And who knows, they'll be using it to create their sample designs, dresses. I'm even in touch with one of them who was Victoria Esiedu, who was bootcamp number 1, cohort 1 graduate, now serving as a student ambassador at Blue Crest University College. And she told me she's won 3 awards at the school since all the confidence we gave her and the tools like the mind map she used in her presentations. And so she is ecstatic. And I might have to go to Ghana for an engagement I can't yet talk about, but it might happen in November again of next year. And I was like, hey, can you design some dress for me? After all, I've poured into you so much. And she's like, of course. And her first design is this slim model. And I was like, when you look at me, do I look like I'm a slim model? I beg, please, so just make it plus size. In fact, I even said, make it a thick woman. And she was like, oh, you mean plus size? I'm like, yep. And so now my dress is being designed by one of the graduates as well. And so it's a joy to watch people just transform from proverbial caterpillars into beautiful butterflies. And I think that's what we are seeing. Nah-Abiah, I don't want to.
Yeah. So I have a little differing perspective from my other colleagues. I guess on the surface, there's a lot of work going on in AI. People are exploring a lot of things, but the data for Africa is limited, which is something that we need to work on ASAP for us to make a mark on the global market. All our data is, well, most of our data is from the Western world. We're not generating and storing our data for use in AI. So our perspectives in whatever the chat GPTs or co-pilots come up with, they don't include our data. They're not contextualized to Africa. So that's something that needs to be worked on across Africa.
Paul, if I can say quickly.
Sure.
Oh, go ahead. What she's saying literally happened to me in graduate school. We're supposed to create a model. I was in the operations research as one of my second master's degrees, in addition to statistical science. And our teacher wanted us to do a project on temperature readings of one city location. So I chose Accra, Ghana. And my goodness, like you look at the data and the data will have a blank spot or stretching over many years. You're like, are they still collecting the data? Did they abandon the project because of a coup or what? Now, by the way, I'm not saying Africa is rife with only coups, because we are from Ghana and we've not had any coups since, I guess, the late 70s. They can correct me if I got that right.
80s.
So, yeah, I remember back in school, coups will happen somewhere and people ask me, what do I know about that? And I'm like, that's a height of ignorance. Africa is just different countries, like, North America is like Canada is separate from the US. So, not to digress, my model also came up flat with the temperature readings, which was interesting because we have a great weather over there, whereas people's in various locations were having spikes and up and downs. That was so, she mentioning that comment, Nah-Abiah bringing that point, it's really real. We can have the passion for the project, but if the data is just not available, then you hamstring yourself, like, in that process. And so, Nah-Abiah, thanks for that enlightenment and education. Very powerful.
Staying on course, maybe let's get a little bit more perspective on this data thing. I've been doing a lot of coverage for Africa, talking to a lot of people. I've traveled extensively across the continent. The one observation that I've seen or I've made is that when it comes to data collection, we still lag behind. It doesn't matter which country. In some cases, people still use a pen and a piece of paper. They stack it in a shelf, rats eat it, and that data is lost. So what is it going to take for Africans or people in Ghana to harness this? Some people call it the new gold. Everybody, every country, when you look at how these big tech companies here are massively investing in data centers. There is a place here in Virginia. There are 3 counties in Northern Virginia called Loudoun County, Prince William County, and Fairfax County. They have these massive data centers. Like, they stretch miles and miles of data centers. So for them, they're seeing value in these data centers. How come that we haven't seen that value?
I will take it if that's fine. I feel like I have to because I've been a lead scientist focusing on data. I've been a senior consultant focusing on strategy and analytics. So, not to overly set expectations, but I feel like I should take it. So you've described a world that is like gold, right? Another analogy is like it's like oil. And then another analogy is like it's like a well flowing with living waters. If we pull in from the Bible, when Jesus was speaking to that Samaritan woman, he said, if you knew who was asking you for this water and for a drink, you will instead not be, parading me with not too relevant questions, but you ask me for rivers of the living water. And it's out of that conversation that she becomes an evangelist for her own community. Now, data is like the fuel in the car. It's like the oil. It's like the well. And it's like what was the other analogy I used? The gold. That's what you use. Without the necessary preparations, like whatever comes out is garbage in and garbage out. It's a very fundamental principle in computer science. And so you want to make sure the data is well prepared, right? And so you highlighting some of the observations on the continent, we can't just use patchy data with missing values, incomplete data to just get to AI, and it's not Africans who are, I don't want to call it an AI hub because AI has been around for a very long time. The interest about it goes up and down depending on market forces and who is investing in it or who is speaking into it, like any commodity, right? But I'm sorry, I'm losing my train of thought, but bear with me. So because it's oil and gas, if you don't spend much time doing the hard work of tilling the garden or, using the bulldozers to get to the gold, then, it defeats the purpose. Now, the reason why I said I want to toe the line of it's not a hype because it's been around for a long time is sometimes, honestly, I feel like maybe people are being a little overzealous right now, because it's real, it's here. We are not taking that out. But will they solve all the challenges that we face? I don't think so. In mathematics, there are very different kinds of solutions like simulation, optimization, regression analysis, machine learning, feature engineering, and so forth. Should we just abandon all of those solutions that have worked timelessly, that mathematicians have owned it and originated, and just stick to AI as a solution and making it a panacea for all our problems? I am not on that side of that debate. I think like we should take our time. Now, when I'm looking for jobs these days, I see people saying they want a data scientist, machine learning slash artificial intelligence executive or an analyst. Look at that. It's like 4 roles being combined into one. Like the ambition of the role, it clearly shows that either some people don't really realize that the bulldozer needed to excavate and get to the oil or the diamonds is very much required, a separate project in its own lane. And then when that is smoothing, then you can take off to AI smoothly, right? But we cannot just jumble everything together and somehow expect a different result. Insanity is doing the same thing over and over again, according to the Albert Einstein quote, and expect a different result. So if Africa wants to own a piece of the pie, it has to fix those data incompleteness, right? And the missing values. But even in advanced countries, let's realize that data is a lot of work that needs to be fixed. And once we fix the data, then we can take off into the artificial intelligence. So I'll let my colleagues also chime in at this point.
Yeah, so maybe, yeah,
Go for it.
yeah, is it okay if I come in? So
Yeah, go ahead.
one of the things, right, that we forget with data from Africa is the context, right? Africa is predominantly an oral-oriented kind of a system, right? The West is more of documentation. They document, they write things, we say things. So my grandmother, would tell my mother how fish is prepared, right? In the West, it's likely that grandmother will write it somewhere, and then the mother will find it as a recipe. So we are more of an oral kind of society. So you have a lot of tacit knowledge that is sitting in people's minds, which is expressed orally and not necessarily in a written form. Now we have these apps that are more text-based apps. So you realize that the apps themselves that are being developed are developed with the context of the West. So if we there's a company in Ghana called Farmerline. They found this, that they essentially they built an app. Initially, they built a text SMS-based app that was essentially communicating with farmers on how to use, let's say, pesticides, insecticides, and so forth on their farms. It shows them they should use the correct quantities and all that. Initially, it was working, but they realized that most of the farmers in the rural communities did not have the ability to read or write. And so what did they do? They iterated and they built voice SMS in the language of the farmers. So you have a farmer in the Volta region who receive the voice SMS in his local language, telling him the specific amount he or she needs to use of pesticides that he or she needs to use on the farm. And boom, the company now is in, I think, more than 16 countries in Africa. Now, this is the context.
Yeah.
You've seen them, right? This is the context of Africa. So this is why organizations like CWT is critical, because we need people with the right capabilities to build the platforms, not just users of the platforms, because these platforms are are created based on the context of the West. So, for example, how does my mother, who is illiterate, how will she be able to use ChatGPT if the local languages are not supported in ChatGPT? And this is why there's also another company by Dr. Paul Azunri. They've built a very wonderful app that essentially, translates most of the Ghanaian languages via voice. Because that is our context. The woman who sells by the roadside may not be able to read or write, but she has amazing, a plethora of knowledge about what she does. That's why the kinky, there's a good food in Ghana called kinky. It has tasted the same way for hundreds of years. How is that recipe passed on? Exactly. The grandmother will tell the mother tells the daughter tells the son. It's oral. So how can we build platforms that essentially addresses our specific context? And this is why Coders Who Travel is critical, because we are building, the next generation of platform builders or tweakers who tweak the platforms to address our specific context.
Very well said. Very well said. Nah-Abiah, sorry.
Yeah. So I'd like to add on to what Prince has said, where despite our context being oral, there's also the push from the government side to build the infrastructure needed to harness the data that would be contextualized to Africa's needs. They're across West Africa, at least I know, they're looking at how to boost the infrastructure to reach the remote areas as well. So that's something that's being worked on. I guess the investment needed to be able to build that data center that would host our information locally is something that needs to be taken up.
Yeah. Excellent thoughts, gentlemen.
Great.
Okay.
So I was going to say that in the context of both of you talked about how context matters. In our particular case, we are a very oral-oriented kind of population or audience. But when you look at what's happening in the Western world, for example, I referenced these big, massive data centers that these tech companies are building in. It's not the lack of data. We have data, right? But maybe it's how it's collected, right? So since you guys are in this area, how can you help African governments maybe improve in that department? How can they tap into this technology, enhance that data to better their communities?
Before we move on, if I can politely do another insertion before we get to the government, and I will let Nah-Abiah and Prince take on the government, if that's all right. But, in 2019, September precisely, I was invited by the United Nations Industrial Development Organization to be a panelist to talk about policy framework for industrial skills development in emerging economies. I spoke with a panel of 5 or 6, with moderator from Class CNBC Italy, Claudia, Jürgen from European Commission, Joyce from Kenya Manufacturing Association, Olga as the head of UNIDO's unit, and Sadar Ahmed from the Ministry of Pakistan. Now, as you can imagine, I was quite excited for that opportunity, being a guest of the Division of the United Nations, much so that I actually went there a whole week before Italy just to calm down and then not be stressed out by any traveling experiences. Now, I remember as I approached the hall on the day of the panelists that will have our day, as soon as I got to the entrance, I'm a Christian, and by this time, people should know that. I just heard, "It's not by might, but by my spirit, says the Lord." And that's a verse that I think is either Zechariah or Zerubbabel, that it's not by your might, I, the Lord, will build. And so I let go of all the preparation, not throwing them away, but just relaxing, go in the strength of a divine being, and also just trust yourself, because these people that I mentioned, they are very renowned. And how is Afia being invited to such a table? And so it made my nervousness leave. And I remember the context was what came to her to speak about. Now, when we travel, the electrical sockets is not the same in every different geographical regions, right? we change it as we go. So Ghana's socket is different from the US for sure. Now, when we are implanting things in Africa, there's that kind of expectation that what works in the West must work for Africans. And if Africans don't rise to the occasion, then we are more likely to say it's corruption or leadership crisis. Now, obviously, there's some truth or elements to that, right? But why don't we talk about the rich community that Africa has? Like when I went to Ghana in last year to pay my respects to the traditional ruler of Kukuo-Mahafo region, where Nah-Abiahs and some leaders had already gone there before. I went on this trip and 10 members, I had the driver because we kind of recruited him, 10 members joined me to go and pay respects to that traditional ruler, Osahene Kweku Atechi. That's rich community. If that same thing supposed to happen here, people will give me maybe 3 hours of their time at a funeral. But how will 10 members postpone, take off on Friday and take off on Monday and join their leader just to go and pay respect because they believe in it? That's something we don't hear enough, the richness of Africa. And then we've already used the analogies of oil and we have natural resources, but somehow we can't account for those very well, So Coders Who Travel is now, and I've always had this dream, that it will be a global information exchange. And one of the models is respiratory system and the circulatory, in the respiratory system and the circulatory system. Everyone needs each other. The other needs oxygen. The other needs carbon dioxide. It's a mutual beneficial relationship. Typically, the relationships that have developed over time, it's just based on aid. I mean, if I give you aid and you are not on the equal footing with me to come and challenge me if something is not going right, because I am the source of your funds. But what if we were rotating around community, technology, leadership, and natural resources? Who knows? Everybody will be benefit from such a give and take relationship or a win-win situation. So context matters. One of my challenges was that nobody believed me at the headquarters through the Women Who Code project that Women Who Code Accra is what I founded, because this was a global organization operating in probably 30 plus countries, if not more. Now, the context was in San Francisco, Vancouver, London, Berlin. Women empowerment is great. People will write a check to cover those basic core needs of space, internet, and snacks. In Africa, people are, still figuring out some bread and butter. So I tried. I knocked on many influential doors from top educational institutions where, Paul, we should take you sometime. When you go there, you don't even know whether you are in Africa. And I think Nah-Abiah is actually a graduate of that university. So I'll mention that it's Ashesi University. And I walked there and it was like a dream. Beautiful place. I won't mention those I spoke to, but the sponsorship for those things don't come as easily as it is. I also knocked on some women in tech doors. It just didn't happen. And I did my best. And if I say I did my best, then, I really tried to make it work. So that is some of the real example where you can stay in your corner in a developed country and tell yourself, let me go and save Africans. I personally, I don't like hearing that anymore because what's in it for you? Why do you want to save me? And maybe I don't need saving, because for me, the reason why I was able to carry the burden of that financial and operational gap and walk through that adversity of not receiving your funds after doing an excellent 7 series workshop was the love and the companionship and the beauty and the independence of those women that I interacted with them, and just how smart. They gave me something too of community that I was losing in my quest of assimilation. after you've come to an advanced country, sometimes you hear, even change your accent and those things. But that assimilation process, I realized that maybe I don't have to 100% assimilate. Maybe I can get to the middle and still enjoy what I got from Africa, which were the women who code Accra. I see you want to stop me, so I'll stop.
No, I wanted us to cover a bit of ground, a couple more things, and we're almost running out of time. So try to make your answers very short. Okay. So you want to weigh in as well?
Yeah. So adding to the context, what I guess the governments can do is learn from what has been done internationally, globally, and contextualize it to the African or to their locality, because even within Africa, the context differs across the countries. They should understand the journey that they want to take, do an assessment of where they are currently, the gaps that they have, and how to address them, what investments they'll take, where they'll get the resource fundings from, in order to build that infrastructure and also set up the policies and strategies that would accelerate the Africans and the global digital landscape.
How about you, Prince?
Yeah, so I think from my experience within the data center space, there's no government building data centers. It's private individuals, private companies. So what the governments do is they create the enabling business environment that makes sense to build a data center. So the data center that we are seeing, or data centers we are seeing all over Europe, are built by companies, hyperscalers. And what the governments do is they create the environment. Now, number one would be power. You see, how can you build a data center, right? 30 megawatts or whatever it is, how can you build a data center in a country where, there's blackouts because of lack of new generation power? Like, that is not an enabling environment for a hyperscaler to come and build a data center, or for individual investors within the country to pull together. Now, mind you, these data centers cost between $300 to $1 billion.
Right.
One. For one. So we are not talking about, like they just come in because they love you. No, it's a business transaction. So the government, in my view, should not go into the business of building data centers. They should rather create the enabling environment. For example, where would the data center operators get power to power these chips? Right, in these NVIDIA chips, how would they cool the data center? Because now there are cooling systems that cool at the rack levels, right? So they are looking at where do we get water to get into the cooling racks to cool, the various data centers. How do we ensure that we have the necessary skill set in terms of labor to actually build these data centers? Mind you, these are next generation construction, right? How do we ensure that? So this is what we call the enabling environment. It means that you have catered for the artisans. The artisans have the right skill set. The government has created the right regulatory framework to ensure sustainable construction and sustainable operation. This is where I think the various governments should be focused on. Once the environment is created, definitely you attract the investment that is required to build the data centers. Also, there's research that shows that, when data centers are present in a country, what we discussed earlier about the various contexts or the form in which the data comes, right, in the African context, those problems are usually solved because now we have data centers where we can train, a lot of these machine learning modules, right? We can do a lot of simulations and so forth to be able to store the data, not just store the data, but decode the data, right? Be able to decode the data, for it to be useful. Right, so that's why I mentioned apps like Kaya app by Dr. Palazunre, and that's what they are essentially doing, right? So the government, in my view, should not build data centers, rather create the environment.
Tell me
a quick follow-up. Let me do a quick follow-up on what you just said.
Paul, it's very important that you know that these data centers have extreme noise levels, so much that some of the citizenry, let me talk about my corner of town near Warrington. There's supposed to be a data center popping up. and the residents have been fighting it because they moved over from a big city to somewhere near suburban or rural. And so maybe Prince can educate us on the noise levels and why people fight it in their community. If he
Before
has
Prince
to.
answers, I can add in maybe some kind of a question. I recently did a panel on data centers. I talked to two people opposed to data centers. One of them found himself, they never told them, they never came and sat down with them and told them that we're going to build a data center. Right now, as we speak, it's 100 feet. His front door is 100 feet from the back of the data center. They can't sleep at night. There is this noise, constant noise. Then you talked about electricity. They consume so much energy. The water, everybody is worried. Some of those concerns, if these data centers were to come in Africa, how can our governments, how can our people address those kinds of challenges? We are talking about a developed system here, an ecosystem that has been developed to accommodate these data centers, but residents are complaining, like you correctly said.
Yeah, so again, let's come back to what the governments are supposed to do. Everything you've described, including what Afia mentioned, is a regulatory topic. It's a regulatory topic. You see, the thing with the business environment is businesses will do whatever you don't regulate or whatever you don't enforce by regulation. And that's been since Henry Ford's time to date. If you do not regulate and enforce a regulation, the businesses will test the limits of what they can do. So for example, we talk about noise, we talk about the decibel levels of these. If we look, for example, let's start with the automobile. Automobile, as we know, gasoline or our internal combustion engines have been with us for all these years. Mind you, the pollution topics that we are seeing in recent years through the sustainability goals and everything, essentially did not come to completely eradicate the internal combustion engine. We still use it today. We've used it for so long, and now we are saying, how do we ensure that we reduce pollution? That's the same thing with data centers. You have to understand that you cannot have the kind of computing powers that we have today without data centers. The next question that comes is, what are the innovations in terms of the noise, in terms of power, and so forth, that can be implemented to ensure that, yes, we can still have data centers, but the regulation will say, okay, it has to be a certain kilometers from the nearest habitation, for example, right? And some countries, trust me, are enforcing this, like in Belgium. Like you can't just build anything, any data center anywhere in Belgium or in Norway. It's not possible. It's not like it's not even thinkable. You can't even think about doing it. Why? Because that's why I'm saying that this is where the government's job comes in. You have regulators right from the sword cutting, right from the acquisition of the land. They are monitoring you. Every step you need to report to the regulator. Okay, we have done the demarcation. Okay, we've done the topography investigation. This is the water level. This is the proximity to the nearest habitation. They are monitoring everything. They will come on site and to ascertain the reports you have sent to them. That is the job of the government. So a lot of times we try to cede the work of the government to individual companies. Like companies will always test the limits, and that's been the case. Or if you look at any industry, I've been in pharmaceutical industry before, and I can tell you this: they test the limits of the regulation if not enforced. So every time I talk about this, it's not just it's with factories, even factories that manufacture the food we eat. They still have high decibel levels. If you've been to any huge factory, you know this, or any Amazon warehouse, there's high decibel levels, there's high pollution in most of these factories. If you take even the oil industry, for example, there's huge pollution. The problem isn't with the abuse of a system. And that's where I think we make the mistake. We take an example of a company that's abusing the system and we generalize it that data centers are bad. That for me, it's not a deep analytical approach, right? So don't take an example of one who is abusing the system. Rather, take an example of what the government can do. Take an example of what government is doing elsewhere that's making it work and then apply it to those who are abusing the system. So unfortunately, that's how businesses have been run for centuries. Businesses will test the limit of the regulation unless the government enforces it.
We're almost out of time. I have like two quick questions. I want you guys to briefly touch on them. I wanted us to look at beyond employment. You're training these young people to acquire skills to gain employment. Beyond that, what can these maybe skills help these young people to do?
I'll take that on. So I recently gave a lecture, and I'll try to be brief. I gave a lecture at Loyola University, Chicago, a dual lecture. And the second lecture focused on AI secrets for job searching. That was the first, and AI secrets for creating business marketing videos. There was a student in both classes. The first lecture, he was fine. Actually, the first lecture was creating a personal board of advisors, and I watched him be fine with that. And the second lecture combined AI secrets for job hunting and entrepreneurship in terms of marketing. He was not having it. He couldn't handle the second lecture at all because of his heart posture towards AI. And he was asking me questions like, but you already use graphic designers for this flyer. Why are you here talking about AI? Da, 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 da. And then I was like, he doesn't like AI at all, And here I was having fun with AI, but still maintaining judgment to use graphic designers for my flyers if I feel like I have to deliver a top-notch flyer. You see what I'm saying? So what Prince is saying, the bias is, don't be too biased. But in terms of where we are going, we want to put it, and this is a steal from one of the students during that awkward exchange between me and that student. And she was like, first, thank you for playing some of your instrumental music. We kind of needed that to relax everybody. Number two, I think AI will be like photography is when smartphones came. We had official photographers, but now everybody takes pictures and videos. So that's what we are trying to do. We are giving coding into the hands of not just young Africans. We've done it for veterans, women, students, and also career professionals, so they can lay hold of the future that they are destined for. So think about photography. When you think AI, think about what photography did. And shout outs to the students who added that contribution in that lecture. So I'll keep it brief. I hope I was.
Very nice. Nah-Abiah?
Oh, I think Effie has covered it, making them job ready, making sure they can find employment after we take them through the boot camps and their structured educational services.
How about you, Prince?
Yeah, so I think the other aspect is and making them understand business models, right? So for most of us who have joined CWT, either at the board level or as volunteers, we have essentially done some of these things we are discussing. So it's easier for us to bring to the fore, our experiences to not just mentor the students, but also to make them understand business models, right? So like someone for myself, I registered my first company second year of my undergraduate, right? And ever since I've built several other companies. So with that, I'm able to essentially, understand what business models would thrive in certain contexts, and I'm able to impart that to the students that come through our programs and that come through the events that we organize. So beyond everything, we also make them understand business models.
Yeah, we get that a lot with the two cohorts, that some people don't want jobs. They want to create their own things and be entrepreneurs.
I like that. In fact, I was going to ask you, like, what are some of those kids saying when you've talked to them, when you've sat down with them? Do they want to get into business? Do they want to become entrepreneurs? Do they want to become the next big thing? Work for Google, work for Ernst Young? What do these young people tell you?
We focus on telling them, or if we're not even telling them, I'm showing with my life lived in front of them that you can have a corporate paying job and still have philanthropic or entrepreneurship ambitions on the side. You don't have to quit your 9 to 5 and jump like certain motivational speakers might have that inclination to tell people. You can balance it if you want it and decide the percentage that you want. So by and large, they will take hold of their future and decide for themselves, is what we are hearing, that yes, majority may want jobs, but they're ambitious. All the names you were mentioning, we heard it in that judging event and through the course of being the lead instructor and facilitator with Nah-Abiah and another colleague called Dr. Angela Aliu that we should mention. So we don't know how the future will be. We just know it will be miraculous. It will be like a well-lit sky with clouds or sunsets. Who knows? However they choose to go, we are just setting them free by giving them wings. And I think at the end of the day, it allows me to sleep well at night, knowing that I just gave them wings.
Very briefly, what does success mean to the organization that you run and to you as individuals?
Should I take on that also? Or Prince
Either one
and
of you.
Nah-Abiah, you want to? Maybe they should go first since I just went, and then I'll close it. I'll wrap it.
Sure.
Yeah, so success is, for me, is imparting knowledge and also inspiring others or the people that we mentor to go for it, to do what they believe they can, to open their minds. Yeah.
Yeah, the same thing. For me, success, in this whole thing we're doing is enlightenment, right? So what we do is to enlighten, the young generation that is coming up. And by enlightenment, it could be in the form of motivation. It could be in the form of introducing new knowledge or perspectives to whatever they're already doing. It could also be introducing new skill sets to them. So this is, for me, what I see as success, with this whole passion that we have for CWT.
I recently had the honor of being named the co-chair of the Maiden Homecoming event at the University of Ghana Department of Computer Science recently. And as I went through my preparation on the role that the alumni will play in the future of the department, I found myself resonating with the story of the vine and the branches, how and the roots and the seeds, right? Like Jesus speaks about. And it was also clarity came when I spoke to a mentor, a trusted advisor. Now, there are so many metrics for success, KPIs, key performance indicators. If you are in sales, you know all about hitting targets, etc. But I am learning to unwind or distance a little bit from sometimes those metrics in my heart of hearts, not because I can't do them. I've always been a little bit competitive since my start was kind of tomboyish with my male cousins. But because I now treat it more that the people that come into our hands are seeds being planted in various environments, like the enabling environments he talks about. But in scripture, Jesus calls it the good soil. Now, some seeds fell on the rocks, roadside, but some fell in a good soil, and it was multiplied in hundreds and folds. So I'm taking time building the seeds. Then the next level, the seeds grow and become branches. And those branches need to be pruned. So it's not a matter of hitting thousands of people in a go, although that had been a focus of mine in times past, because it seems that is what the industry wants. But the more I'm maturing and evolving along the journey, building the seeds and the seeds becoming evangelists on their own educational institutions, bringing more people into the fold themselves, then or partnering with them to prune or make sure we streamline things and build people up. So that stories like that fashion lady, Victoria Siedu, winning 3 awards after attending our bootcamp cohort 1, which is Excel in Your Career workshop, that brings me peace and fulfillment beyond any other thing. And that's what I define as success at this point.
Unfortunately, we've run out of time. I want to thank you all for being great guests. It's been an absolute pleasure to host all of you.
Thank
Thank you, Paul.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Stick around for a few minutes, and don't forget to like, follow, and subscribe to me, Paul Ndiho, on Substack, X, Instagram, Facebook, Threads, LinkedIn, YouTube, and Spotify. I will see you on another edition of Different Perspectives, coming to you shortly. For now, so long from Washington. Thank you so much.